There is something I need you to know tonight, something that was set into motion long before this moment arrived. The person you have been thinking about, the one whose energy still lingers around your heart, recently did something unexpected. They took your photo to a psychic. Not because they were trying to forget you. Not because they no longer cared. And not because they had all the answers. No. They went because something inside them had become impossible to ignore. For days, perhaps even weeks, they had been carrying a strange feeling they could not explain. Your presence kept appearing in their mind at unusual moments. While driving. While eating. While trying to sleep. Even while speaking to other people. Your energy kept interrupting their thoughts. And that unsettled them. Because deep down, they knew this was no ordinary connection. But what happened next was something they never expected. As they handed over your photo, they tried to appear calm. They asked simple questions. Questions they believed they could control. Who is this person? Why can't I stop thinking about them? Why does their energy keep following me? The room suddenly became quieter. The psychic stared at your photo longer than expected. Not seconds. But an uncomfortable amount of time. Long enough to make their heart race. Long enough to make them wonder if they had made a mistake. Then something unusual happened. The psychic slowly lifted their eyes. And their expression completely changed. Your person felt it immediately. That invisible shift. That moment when a casual conversation transformed into something much deeper. Because what they were about to hear was never the answer they anticipated. The psychic spoke softly. Almost carefully. As if every word carried a weight they could not ignore. They said, "This person carries an extraordinary light around them." Your person froze. Because they had expected ordinary descriptions. Maybe personality traits. Maybe simple compatibility answers. But this was different. The psychic continued. This soul has walked through many disappointments, yet their heart remains open. Your person said nothing. Because suddenly they remembered things they had overlooked. The moments when you remained kind despite being hurt. The moments when you stayed silent instead of creating conflict. The moments they misunderstood your intentions. One by one. Memories started returning. And something inside them began to crack. Then another sentence came. One they will never forget. This person has been preparing for a new chapter in life, even if they don't fully realize it yet. At that moment, your person felt chills. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Something about you has been changing lately. Even if nobody else sees it. Even if you don't always recognize it yourself. Your energy has been shifting. You have been growing stronger. More aware. More protective of your peace. And whether you realize it or not, people can feel that transformation. Especially them. The psychic then leaned forward. Their voice becoming even softer. Almost like they were revealing a secret heaven had whispered. And they said, "This connection was never random." Your person's breathing changed. Because suddenly every coincidence started making sense. Every unexpected encounter. Every delay. Every misunderstanding. Every separation. Nothing felt accidental anymore. And for the first time in a long time, they stopped resisting what their heart already knew. Because sometimes, people spend so much energy trying to explain a connection logically, that they forget the soul speaks an entirely different language. Your person had been fighting their feelings. Questioning themselves. Doubting their intuition. Pretending they were unaffected. But in that room, with your photo resting between their hands, those walls slowly began to collapse. And then, The psychic asked a question they never saw coming. A question that immediately silenced the entire room. They asked, "Why are you afraid of someone who was never sent to harm you?" Your person had no answer. Because suddenly, every fear they carried surfaced all at once. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of rejection. Fear of timing. Fear of being seen too deeply. Fear of losing something that could become important. And perhaps, the greatest fear of all. The fear that this connection might actually be real. Because real connections change people forever. And they knew that. Then the psychic looked at your photo one final time. And said a sentence so unexpected, that your person's entire understanding of you began to transform in that very moment. But what those next words were, and why they immediately altered the future they had imagined, is something heaven is only beginning to reveal. A strange silence remained in that room after those words were spoken. Your person could no longer hide behind logic. Something inside them had already shifted. But they still did not know how deeply this moment was about to affect them. Then, the psychic slowly placed your photo back onto the table. They did not rush. They did not dramatize the moment. Instead, they looked directly into your person's eyes and said something that immediately made their heart skip a beat. This person is not here to teach you pain. Your person's entire body became still. Because without realizing it, that had been their greatest assumption all along. Somewhere inside themselves, they had built invisible walls. Walls created from old disappointments, old wounds, old betrayals, experiences they never fully healed from. And unknowingly, they had placed those fears onto you. Not because you deserved it, but because fear has a strange way of disguising itself as protection. The psychic continued. They have been blaming this connection for emotions that were never caused by this person. At that moment, your person felt a wave of realization wash over them. Memories started replaying inside their mind. Moments they once misunderstood. Words they once ignored. Gestures they once minimized. Suddenly, they began seeing you differently. Almost as if someone had removed a veil from their eyes. Because sometimes, the soul recognizes truth long before the mind is ready to accept it. And that was exactly what was happening. The psychic then closed their eyes for a brief moment, as if listening to something invisible. Then they whispered, "This person's heart is far stronger than you realize." Your person felt chills. Because deep inside, they knew this was true. You have survived things most people never knew about. Battles you never announced. Lonely nights you never explained. Moments when you carried burdens in silence. Yet somehow, you kept moving forward. And that silent strength has always been one of the reasons they could never fully let go of you. Even when they tried. Even when distance appeared. Even when circumstances became confusing. Your energy never truly left them. Because certain souls do not disappear. They remain present. Even in absence. The psychic then said something that startled them. This person has stopped chasing what is not meant for them. Your person immediately felt something tighten inside their chest. Because they sensed a change. A real one. Perhaps recently. You have been choosing yourself more often. Protecting your energy. Stepping away from unnecessary chaos. Learning that your peace is valuable. And even though you may not realize it, that transformation is impossible to hide. People notice. Especially the ones connected to your heart. Your person has been noticing it too. They may not have said it aloud. But they have felt it. And strangely, it has made their feelings grow stronger. Because there is something powerful about a soul that finally learns its own worth. Then, the psychic leaned closer, their voice almost becoming a whisper. And they said, "This person is no longer waiting to be chosen." Your person's eyes widened. Because suddenly, a truth they had been avoiding surfaced all at once. They realized something they never expected. You are changing. Not into someone different, but into someone more aligned with who you were always meant to be. And that realization frightened them. Not because they disliked it. No. Because they understood something else. If they remained stuck in fear, they could lose the opportunity to become part of your future. That thought alone shook them deeply. For the first time, the possibility of losing you felt real. Not losing your presence overnight, but losing access to the version of you that is evolving. Because life does not pause forever. Souls continue growing. Paths continue unfolding. And people eventually move toward what brings them peace. Then, the psychic said another sentence. A sentence your person will replay inside their head many times after leaving that room. They said, "This person has already been chosen by destiny, the only question is whether you will have the courage to walk beside them." Everything became quiet. Your person swallowed hard. Because no one had ever framed it that way before. This was no longer about chance. No longer about timing. No longer about excuses. This was about courage. The courage to stop running. The courage to stop overthinking. The courage to accept something beautiful without sabotaging it. And perhaps, that realization was the most overwhelming part of all. Because deep down, they finally understood something. The universe was never standing between the two of you. Fear was. And fear can only survive when truth remains hidden. But tonight, truth had begun revealing itself. And then, just when your person thought the reading was over, the psychic suddenly touched your photo one final time. Their expression changed instantly. Almost as if another message had arrived. A much stronger one. Their eyes widened. Their voice lowered. And they said something so unexpected that your person's entire future suddenly felt uncertain. Because according to what they had just seen, someone was about to make a life-changing decision very soon. And that decision would directly involve you. Who that person is. And what choice they are preparing to make. Is the message that is only now beginning to unfold. Something shifted the moment those words entered the room. Your person could feel it. It was subtle. Yet impossible to ignore. Almost as if an invisible door had quietly opened. And behind that door, a truth they had avoided for a very long time was waiting for them. The psychic remained silent for several seconds. Long enough for anticipation to build. Long enough for your person's heart to begin racing again. Then, without looking away from your photo, they spoke. This decision will not be easy. Your person immediately leaned forward. Because somehow, they already knew what this was about. Not with certainty. Not with logic. But with intuition. That quiet voice the soul hears before the mind catches up. The psychic continued. Someone has reached a crossroads. Your person's breathing became heavier. Because lately, their life has felt exactly like that. Standing between who they used to be and who they are becoming. Standing between fear and possibility. Standing between staying comfortable or finally embracing what their heart has been whispering all along. Then came another sentence. One that echoed through them instantly. This connection has entered a new season. Your person froze. Because for so long, They believed everything was standing still. But the truth was very different. Nothing has been standing still. Not your life. Not your energy. Not your future. And certainly not their feelings. Everything has been moving quietly beneath the surface. Like roots growing underneath the earth before anyone notices the tree above. And perhaps that is exactly what heaven has been preparing. The psychic then said something that startled them. This person has unknowingly become your mirror. Your person's eyes widened. Because suddenly, everything started making sense. Why your happiness affected them. Why your silence affected them. Why your growth affected them. Why your absence affected them. You were never just another person passing through their life. You became a reflection. A reflection that exposed truths they could no longer hide from themselves. Sometimes that was beautiful. Sometimes uncomfortable. But always meaningful. Because real connections do not flatter the ego. They awaken the soul. Then, the psychic gently traced their finger across the edge of your photo. And whispered. This person is preparing to receive something they once thought they would never have. Your person immediately felt emotional. Because they knew. You have carried silent disappointments. There were moments when life felt unfair. Moments when your faith was tested. Moments when you quietly wondered if things would ever change. But heaven heard every unanswered prayer. Even the ones you never spoke aloud. Especially those. Because no sincere hope is ever wasted. No tear is forgotten. No season of patience goes unseen. Then something extraordinary happened. The psychic suddenly smiled. Not a dramatic smile. Not an exaggerated one. A peaceful smile. As if they had seen something beautiful ahead. And they said, there is light surrounding this person's future. Your person's entire expression changed. Because they had never heard someone describe you that way before. Light. Not struggle. Not confusion. Not limitation. Light. And somehow, that single word transformed everything. Because light attracts. Light heals. Light guides. Light reveals. And perhaps, that is why they have never been able to completely walk away from you. Your energy reminds them of something their soul desperately needs. Hope. Then the psychic lowered their voice once more. This connection was delayed, but never denied. Your person's heartbeat immediately accelerated. Because that sentence carried enormous meaning. Delayed. Not denied. There is a difference. A very important one. Because sometimes heaven slows things down. Not to punish us. But to prepare us. To strengthen us. To align us. To protect us from receiving something before we are ready. And perhaps, that is what has been happening all along. You were both growing separately. Learning lessons individually. Healing unseen wounds. Until eventually, the timing itself could evolve. Then, the psychic asked your person a question they were not prepared to answer. They asked, what if this person entered your life to become one of the greatest blessings you have ever known? Silence filled the room. Because suddenly, your person realized how much fear had stolen from them. Fear had stolen possibilities. Fear had stolen honesty. Fear had stolen moments that could have been beautiful. And for the first time, they felt genuine regret. Not because they had bad intentions, but because they understood something important. Fear protects temporarily. But truth transforms permanently. Then, without warning, the psychic's expression changed once again. More serious this time. Their eyes fixed onto your photo. Their voice became quieter, almost reverent. And they said, "There is something this person does not know yet." Your person immediately sat up straighter. Because those words carried enormous weight. Something unknown. Something approaching. Something significant. The psychic paused. And then revealed only a fragment. A message, a conversation. Or an unexpected event is moving closer than either of you realize. Your person's heart instantly began racing. Because somehow, they could feel it too. That invisible sense that life is preparing to turn a page. But they still don't know when. Tomorrow. Next week. Very soon. The timing remains hidden. Yet the energy surrounding it is undeniable. And what makes this even more astonishing is that once this event happens, nothing between you will feel exactly the same again. Because according to what the psychic is now seeing, one truth has remained hidden for far too long. And the moment that truth is finally spoken aloud, everything will begin changing in ways neither of you expected. An unexpected feeling followed those words. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Something deeper. Something your person could not quite explain. It felt like standing at the edge of a doorway, knowing life was about to change, but not knowing what waited on the other side. The psychic remained perfectly still, their eyes resting on your photo, almost as if they were listening to a message arriving from somewhere beyond ordinary understanding. Then, very softly, they said something that immediately sent chills through your person's entire body. This truth has been trying to reveal itself for a long time. Your person swallowed hard. Because instantly, several memories returned all at once. Conversations they replayed in their mind. Small moments they overlooked. Subtle signs they dismissed. Everything began connecting together. Like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their place. And for the first time, they started seeing your connection from an entirely different perspective. Not as a mystery, but as a journey. A journey that had always been moving towards something important. Then the psychic spoke again. This person was never sent to complicate your life. Your person's eyes immediately softened. Because perhaps, without realizing it, they had blamed the connection for the confusion they themselves carried. When in reality, you were never the source of the storm. You were often the calm they refused to trust. And that realization touched something very deep inside them. Because sometimes, the heart recognizes safety long before the mind feels ready to accept it. Then another sentence came. One they will remember forever. This person has already forgiven things you never apologized for. Silence filled the room. Because those words landed heavily. Your person suddenly understood something painful. You have shown grace. More than they deserved at times. You have been patient. More than they expected. You have carried understanding. Even when misunderstanding stood between you. And perhaps, that quiet compassion became one of the reasons they could never truly walk away. Because kindness leaves an imprint that time cannot erase. Then, the psychic leaned back slightly. Their voice growing softer. Almost emotional. And they said, "This soul carries a rare gift." Your person immediately became curious. Because they had never heard someone describe you that way before. A gift. What kind of gift? The psychic answered without hesitation. The ability to inspire transformation in others. Your person's entire body became still. Because suddenly, they realized something astonishing. You have changed them. Not through pressure. Not through force. But simply by being yourself. You challenged them to grow. You inspired reflection. You awakened emotions they buried long ago. And perhaps that was why this connection felt impossible to ignore. Because certain people do not enter our lives to remain ordinary memories. They arrive to awaken dormant parts of our souls. Then, the psychic lowered their voice once more. This person is entering a season of abundance. Your person blinked in surprise. Because they immediately sensed this was not only about material things. No. This was much deeper. Abundance of peace. Abundance of clarity. Abundance of opportunities. Abundance of self-worth. Abundance of love that no longer requires begging or chasing. And something about hearing those words made their heart ache. Because deep down, they realized something. If they continued waiting too long, they might meet a version of you that no longer needs their hesitation. That thought shook them profoundly. Because life does not pause while people overthink. Destiny continues moving. And souls continue evolving. Then, the psychic asked another question. One that left your person speechless. They asked, what if this person's biggest chapter has not even begun yet? Everything became quiet. Because suddenly, your future felt enormous. Bigger than either of you had imagined. Bigger than past disappointments. Bigger than old fears. Bigger than temporary distance. And for the first time, your person felt excitement instead of uncertainty. Because perhaps, what lies ahead is far greater than what was left behind. Then, the psychic closed their eyes. And for several moments, they said nothing. The room itself felt different. As if even time had slowed down. Then their eyes opened suddenly. And they spoke with unmistakable certainty. There is one thing this person must never forget. Your person leaned closer. Their heart pounding. Waiting for the answer. The psychic looked at your photo. And whispered. They were never meant to shrink themselves so others could feel comfortable. Your person's entire perspective shifted instantly. Because they understood something important. You have spent too much time dimming your light. Too much time questioning your worth. Too much time carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. But that season is ending. A new one is beginning. And heaven has already started opening doors you cannot yet see. Then, just when your person thought the reading had finally reached its end, the psychic's expression changed one last time. Their eyes widened ever so slightly. Their voice dropped to almost a whisper. And they said something so unexpected that your person felt their entire future rearrange itself in an instant. They said, this person is much closer to receiving a life-changing blessing than anyone realizes. But there was one detail attached to that blessing. One surprising detail. That your person was absolutely not prepared to hear. And once it is revealed, nothing will ever feel ordinary between you again. There was a different energy in the room now. The kind of energy that appears only when something significant is about to be revealed. Your person could feel it. Their hands rested quietly in their lap. Yet inside, their thoughts were moving faster than ever before. Because somehow, they knew this was no longer an ordinary reading. This had become a message they were meant to hear. The psychic carefully looked at your photo one more time. Then, with incredible calmness, they said something that instantly caught your person's attention. This blessing is connected to courage. Your person froze. Because immediately, they understood one thing. The future would not unfold through fear. It would unfold through action. Not perfect action. Not fearless action. Simply honest action. Then the psychic continued. Someone will soon have an opportunity to speak from the heart. Your person's breathing became heavier. Because deep down, they knew exactly who was being described. For too long, words remained unspoken. Feelings remained hidden. Questions remained unanswered. But heaven was no longer supporting silence. Because silence has a purpose. But only for a season. Eventually, truth asks to be heard. Then, the psychic gently touched the corner of your photo. And smiled. This person is attracting blessings because they finally began choosing themselves. Your person's eyes softened. Because lately, they have noticed changes in you. Perhaps you laugh more often now. Perhaps you no longer chase people who cannot meet your energy. Perhaps you are protecting your peace in ways you never did before. Maybe you are finally understanding something extraordinary. Your value was never dependent upon someone else's approval. It never was. And it never will be. The psychic then said something beautiful. The universe responds differently when a soul remembers its worth. Your person immediately felt emotional. Because they realized. Your energy has changed. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Quietly. Powerfully. The kind of change that does not seek attention. Yet somehow attracts it naturally. And perhaps that is why they feel themselves being drawn toward you again. Because confidence born from healing creates a light people cannot ignore. Then, the psychic leaned closer. Their expression becoming serious once more. There is unfinished truth between you. Your person's heartbeat accelerated. Because they knew this was true. Not unfinished because of conflict. Not unfinished because of mistakes. But unfinished because honesty has not fully arrived yet. Words remain trapped inside their heart. Words they are afraid to say. Words they rehearse privately. Words they imagine telling you. But somehow never do. Then, the psychic whispered something unexpected. This truth will not stay hidden much longer. Your person's entire body became still. Because they could feel it. That invisible pressure life sometimes creates. Before a breakthrough arrives. Then came another sentence. One they will replay repeatedly after leaving that room. The next chapter begins when someone chooses authenticity over fear. Immediately, something inside them shifted. Because perhaps this has never been about finding the perfect moment. Perhaps it has always been about finding the courage to stop delaying what the heart already knows. Then, the psychic closed their eyes once more. And a peaceful expression appeared across their face. Almost as if they were witnessing a future scene unfolding. Then they said, "I see joy ahead." Your person immediately became curious. Because joy felt unexpected. After all the confusion. After all the uncertainty. After all the overthinking. Joy? The psychic smiled. And answered without being asked. Yes, joy. Because not every meaningful story is meant to end in struggle. Some stories are meant to evolve into peace. Some are meant to become safe spaces. Some are meant to teach people that love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives gently. Patiently. Steadily. Then, the psychic said something else. Something your person was completely unprepared to hear. This person has unknowingly become one of your greatest teachers. Your person's eyes widened. Because suddenly, everything made sense. You taught them patience. You taught them reflection. You taught them growth. You taught them how valuable genuine energy truly is. And perhaps, most importantly, You taught them that connections built upon authenticity cannot be easily forgotten. Then, a long silence filled the room. The psychic stared at your photo for several moments, their expression becoming more serious than ever before. And then, they said something with absolute certainty. There is an approaching moment that will change everything. Your person's heart skipped a beat. Because those words felt different. Stronger. Almost immediate. The psychic continued. It may arrive unexpectedly. A message. A conversation. An encounter. Or a decision. The exact form is still hidden. But the energy surrounding it is growing stronger every day. And once it happens, the emotional distance that existed for so long will begin to dissolve. Because according to what the psychic is now seeing, someone is finally becoming ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to stop resisting. Ready to acknowledge what their heart has known for a very long time. But then, just before the reading ended, the psychic suddenly looked alarmed. Not fearful. Not worried. Surprised. As if one final detail had appeared at the very last second. Their eyes widened. Their voice dropped to a whisper. And they said, "There is one thing this person absolutely must know before it's too late." The moment your person heard those words, their entire world seemed to pause. Because whatever was about to be revealed next would become the sentence they never forget for the rest of their life. Something extraordinary happened in those final moments. The room itself felt different. The air felt heavier. Time seemed to slow down. Even your person could sense it. Because every instinct inside them was telling them the same thing. This was the message they were always meant to hear. The psychic kept their eyes fixed on your photo. Then, very carefully, they spoke. If you continue ignoring what your heart already knows, life will continue reminding you. Your person immediately felt a wave of emotion. Because suddenly, everything started making sense. The repeated thoughts. The unexpected memories. The moments when your name appeared in their mind for no reason at all. None of it was random. Sometimes, the soul repeats a message until we finally listen. Then, the psychic continued. This connection was never created to be perfect. Your person sat silently. Because perhaps, that was one of the biggest misunderstandings all along. They were waiting for certainty. Waiting for ideal circumstances. Waiting for fear to disappear. But life rarely works that way. The most meaningful moments often arrive before we feel ready. And perhaps, that was the lesson heaven had been trying to teach them. Then came another sentence. One that immediately touched their heart. This person was never asking for perfection. Your person closed their eyes for a brief moment. Because they realized something important. You were never asking them to become someone else. You were never demanding impossible expectations. You were simply asking for honesty, presence, authenticity, and genuine effort. Sometimes, the simplest things become the most valuable things of all. Then, the psychic whispered something beautiful. This soul carries a peaceful future around them. Your person's entire expression softened. Because lately, they have sensed that too. Perhaps you have become calmer. Perhaps you no longer fear being alone. Perhaps you have learned that peace is a greater reward than temporary attention. And that realization changes everything. Because when someone discovers their own peace, they stop chasing uncertainty. Instead, they start attracting what aligns with them naturally. Then, the psychic leaned forward. Their voice becoming even quieter. Almost sacred. And they said, "There is still time." Your person's heart immediately skipped a beat. Because deep down, that was the answer they needed most. Time. Not unlimited time. But time. Enough time to choose differently. Enough time to be honest. Enough time to stop hiding behind excuses. Enough time to become brave. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that truth matters more than fear. Then, the psychic smiled. A peaceful smile. And said something your person will remember forever. The future is not asking for grand gestures. Your person blinked. Surprised. Because they expected something complicated. Something enormous. But the psychic shook their head. No. Then they continued. The future is asking for sincerity. One honest conversation. One genuine decision. One moment of vulnerability. Sometimes. That is all it takes to change an entire story. Then, something unexpected happened. The psychic gently placed their hand over your photo. Closed their eyes. And spoke as if delivering a final message. This person's life is entering a season of beautiful acceleration. Your person's eyes widened. Because they could feel the truth in those words. Doors will begin opening. Confidence will begin growing. Blessings will begin appearing in unexpected ways. Not because luck suddenly arrives. But because alignment has begun. Because when someone finally chooses themselves, life often responds in extraordinary ways. Then, the psychic said something even more astonishing. This person's light will become impossible to ignore. Your person felt chills. Because perhaps, that is already happening. People are beginning to notice your energy. Your presence. Your growth. Your calmness. Even if they do not fully understand it. They can feel it. And perhaps, that is exactly why their feelings have been changing so dramatically. Because your evolution is awakening something inside them too. Then, the psychic became very serious one last time. Their eyes slowly opened. And they spoke with absolute certainty. This story is far from over. Your person's breathing became uneven. Because somehow, those words carried tremendous comfort. Far from over. Not finished. Not forgotten. Not lost. Far from over. Then, the psychic stood up. As if the reading had finally reached its end. But right before your person walked away, the psychic called them back. One final sentence remained. One final truth. One final revelation. Your person turned around. And the psychic whispered. When the next sign appears, do not ignore it. Silence filled the room. Because according to what they had just seen, that sign will arrive much sooner than expected. And when it does, it will force someone to finally make a choice they have been postponing for far too long. Because heaven is no longer preparing this story. Heaven is preparing movement. And the person who will take the very first step may not be who either of you expect.